Trump is so threatened by the BRICS nation. They were joking online that he said Spain is part of BRICS, and people were like, Trump knows nothing. He knows exactly what he was saying. He meant it was one of the countries who wants to move away from the dollar.
How do you respond to people who say that Love in Dubai portrays or presents an overly idealized image of Dubai?
You have one of the biggest news writers is basically have a decline in viewership. Do you think that has a lot to do with the successful podcasters and perhaps the influencers that we have in the world these days?
You know, Amr, it's my passion point. I love this topic.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have with us our special guest today, Richard from Augustus Media, known as Love in Dubai in the marketplace, and my co-host, Rajay, that's going to help me be able to get to know better what Richard's all about. Thank you so much for your time and coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Amr. Raja, nice to be on the Main Mike's podcast from Main Realty, so it's good to chat.
No, well, we're glad to have you, and I think one of the things that the audience wants to know is what's the whole story about what's going on with Trump in today's news these days. I know he's made some big announcements, and as he's taken his seat, he's taken a lot of executive orders that he's put into place. What do you think? How is that going to affect the global economies or the way that America does business or gets known around the world?
In many different ways. It's hard to read too much into it. It's been 1 week. People did expect a lot of executive orders, as you said. A lot of them have happened. It's a president of a country of a few 100 million people, and there's 8-9 billion people on the world. Yes, they're a superpower. They're a couple of $1 trillion GDP. They're a big economy, but he's not the leader of the world. So, alhamdulillah, we've great leaders in this region.
Yes.
And, I'm more focused, more concerned about the turf that we sit on and what we're doing here. But for no doubt will have impact. I think this is, obviously it's the second term. So that's sort of 16 to 20 periods. We sort of, there are less unknowns. If this was January 2016, there would be more unknowns. Sure. I think his relationship with the region, his relationship with Saudi, the geopolitics, some of his ideas. I would sort of, though he's older, right? And I think at Trump now, in 4 years' time, when he will be really focused on his legacy, when he won't run again, when he's 82, I do think that the younger energy, the people who are surrounding him, will have even more influence. Yeah. Obviously, to try and influence Trump is always a mistake. He's obviously his own mind and he's unpredictable, and no one should do that. But it's just my sense that as he sort of gets 4 years older, we saw, with Biden, as he gets 4 years older, I think you could answer that question if you looked around him a bit more.
Sure.
And who those key players are at that time will have a significant impact as well.
Agreed, yeah.
I believe just him being re-elected is a relief to most of the people around the globe because, he does have... I would say that Trump is considered like a wild card because we don't know what's going to be his next step, his next announcements and all of that. But at the end of the time, at the end of the day, he's a businessman. So people are actually most of investors, entrepreneurs, and also leaders around the world are kind of more relieved that he's now on top of that administration.
As Richard said, I think one of the things that we're blessed to have is great leadership in our region. And that allows us to be able to rest peacefully that we have our best interest in mind. But now for the American people, I'd say that they're very optimistic with his leadership. They're very optimistic that things will get better from an economic standpoint, definitely. In the US, we felt almost a bottom of a recession in the last 24 months, and people were losing hope that as if, how are we going to basically ever get out of this mess? And COVID was a bad era for the world, but at the same time, there was so much money printed in the US that basically created this inflation. And then you had decision making in the US that completely went the other way, that where was I believe, almost anti-economic, going into wars and having the anti-inflation type of mindsets. But now with him, people are optimistic, people are more bullish that things will get better, and especially with this cabinet, with the people around him, decision makers, they feel that those people will truly be the true people that are going to be making the decisions, such as Elon Musk in the back pocket for Trump. So I think that right there, that combination is what makes people around the globe feel a little bit more optimistic about the economies. Well, obviously, like you said, U.S. is not it's definitely a force to be reckoned with, but it's not just the whole world, and we still have a lot more.
It impacts the world heavily. I mean,
Absolutely.
Anything that's going on with them has a global impact on everyone's economy and everyone's situation.
Yeah, but like you said, yes, 2025, with him being elected in the beginning of the year, I feel like the sentiment around the world, with media talking about wars ending, new elections and new people coming into power, that I feel like the economy is going to be in a better place this year, or a little bit more optimistic than last year. Don't you guys think?
Yeah, I think Davos is on now. One of the narratives at the start of 2024 was over 60% of the planet was going to go to the polls last year. You had elections in India and the UK and US and many countries, and that was a full sort of narrative of the year. Now that that's happened, people can kind of go, okay, well, we know who the decision makers are, and we can kind of know who the players are, and you can try to read in and predict, an economic outlook. But we've been in Dubai a long time, and I think sometimes we get caught up in Western narratives. I remember, when we started Loving Dubai in 2015, 10 years now. People would say, "Hey, why aren't you talking about the recession? Are you not allowed to?" But technically, there wasn't two cyclical quarters, in recession with negative GDP growth. So it wasn't technically a recession, but people were struggling. Property prices were dropping significantly year on year. And the reason why we weren't is technically it wasn't, but also secondly, the US weren't talking about recession. Yeah. And now, like since 2020, we've been on one, so to speak, right? The GDPs, the Gulf, the modern Gulf states, the investment, the sovereign wealth funds, but in the UK and the US, in the UK they're calling it cost of living crisis. In the US, across everything, the places have struggled. VC money has dried up. There was virtually no big blockbuster IPOs last year. So, the narrative before was globalization, and if the US sneezes, the world catches a cold. It's just more nuanced than that now. And, going back to your point about a businessman and a deal maker, absolutely. I knew a gentleman once who met Trump in Dubai, and he asked for a signature. And he handed us his pen, and Trump signed something for him, and he said, "I'll keep the pen, please." Because he literally wanted to keep the pen. Because he gave a signature, he wasn't giving it for free.
Oh, wow.
The pen was nothing. Yeah. But his whole mindset is deal making. Yeah. And when you hear his speeches, when you hear, he makes statements, it's all negotiation, it's all deal making.
Yeah.
And I studied economics, and that's not what we're taught, how to run a country.
Yeah.
It's all about fiscal policy, monetary policy. It's all about economic incentives and alignment. And I think you need to find a balance. Nothing wrong with CEO leaders. We have a CEO Sheikh here that's served us very well, as is a title of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed's one of his books. But, I admire what Trump does in many aspects. But again, I think you need a balance. And I think economics goes a long way with getting the right return. Like you talked about, you talked about an economy and people struggling to pay bills and things in the US. Sure, announcing deals of hundreds of billions into the US, as he's talking about, might be smart. Hussein Sujani announced $20 billion into data centers in the US. There's a Saudi investment in there.
Yes.
There's obviously arms and things being sold in there. But at the same time, we all woke up this morning and read about deep the new Chinese deep. I just read about it this morning. But anyway,
Have you? Okay, I hadn't
DeepMind.
looked at it.
So DeepMind is the faster, better OpenAI that's just taken Silicon Valley by storm. Overnight, it's faster. And a gentleman, a hedge fund guy in China, started buying up NVIDIA chips in 2021. And everyone thought it was the billionaire playboy stunt. No one could take on NVIDIA, OpenAI, and whatever, or OpenAI and DeepMind by Google. But what happened was they thought that Tencent or ByteDance would be the ones that could buy all the chips. And he's produced something incredible, and with less engineers than all these have. And then there was a statement made, because a few weeks ago, the US put a cap on how many chips they can sell. Mm-hmm. You know, economically, that's stopping. Like if you stop things going in and out of a country, mm-hmm. You're capping things.
There'll be advancement pauses.
So other people will be forced to find their own chips and their own solutions if you're stopping export, and that's what's happening. So I think it's a bit nuanced. You might put America first. You might want to do the headline deals, but again, economics like cross-border trade, free trade works, and I think the more that that's why the BRICS nation is so important, and Trump is so threatened by the BRICS nation. They were joking online that he said Spain is part of BRICS, and people were like, Trump knows nothing. He knows exactly what he was saying. He meant it was one of the countries who wants to move away from the dollar. He knows it's not in BRICS, but he says he's one of them. Spain is one of the countries who doesn't want to do business with us in the way we wanted before. So this is a lot of conflict.
Sure.
It's not open trade, and I don't know if long term it works.
Got it. Well, one thing that I learned also just recently, that CNN, in the midst of everyone growing their business, CNN is doing the biggest round of layoffs. And it's because of decline of viewership.
Yeah.
That was something very shocking for me to learn. That we're in the world of connectivity, we're in the world of social media. You have one of the biggest news writers is basically have a decline in viewership. Do you think that has a lot to do with the successful podcasters and perhaps the influencers that we have in the world these days?
Amr, it's my passion point. I love this topic. But at the inauguration, I was with an American journalist, and she was in Dubai for the 1 Billion Followers Summit, and she was going straight back to Washington to be at the inauguration. And the inauguration this year was a lot about big tech. TikTok were there and they were being banned that day. Apple had a party. Spotify hosted the podcasters who got Trump elected in their language. So it was all about this sort of new media stuff. A little bit more information on the CNN. So CNN moved out of AT&T and it moved into Warner Brothers Discovery under David Zaslav. And as he was taking over, he cancelled CNN Plus. This was about 2 or 3 years ago. And CNN had a leader at the time, Jeff Zucker, who's now with IMI in Abu Dhabi, Redbird IMI, but they haven't gotten a vehicle. They tried to buy a news outlet in the UK, at the Telegraph. But so CNN was struggling. The numbers actually, if you read more into that detail of the 800 layoffs, the inauguration was watched by 1.1 million people on CNN, down from 10 million 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But, so you'd think that's clear, that's that. But if you read the next line, 10 million people watched the inauguration on Fox.
Oh.
So they still watch linear legacy TV in the US. Cord cutting was massive. This whole move into streaming is absolutely massive. Podcasts getting bigger. Legacy media is in trouble, big time. They're all losing money.
Yeah.
They call them spincos. Comcast, Brian Roberts is spinning off the legacy stuff. Bob Iger in his second innings as CEO of Disney is also trying to spin off some of his cable things. So they're cash cows. Fox News makes about $3 billion a year. That's more than X. That's more than Elon Musk's X cash. They're cash cows, but they're clearly declining in audience.
That's, I think, one of the things that I always looked for when I moved to Dubai is that local news channel for being able to know what the weather's like, what is going to be the sports schedule for the weekend and things like that. And now I turn on my social media and look at Love in Dubai for all that news instead of a local news channel. And then when I heard that from what's going on in the US, I'm like, man, they're catching on, that we were ahead of the curve, where we have much more relevant news that is according to our own liking rather than just watching the generic news channels that we would watch growing up. Did you feel that is happening also?
No, definitely. I actually wanted to get your point since you're in the midst of it and this is what you do. So what's your take on the landscape of media here in the Middle East and specifically here in Dubai or in the UAE?
Yeah, in terms of who the players are or how it's going?
In terms of who are the main players, in terms of viewership and what people prefer to see and to watch, and also in terms of trends.
Yeah, it would be quite easy to just look at digital and talk about that, but we're publishing our 2024 annual report, and it's got a competitor set. And as much as to say that the legacy media isn't as in digital, there are some successes, and both SRMG and NBC are now listed at Tadawul in Saudi, and both have top line $1 billion gross. That's high. Meta's at that number. Then moving over, ByteDance obviously don't disclose or aren't listed yet. We thought they might, but they haven't yet. But we think TikTok's a couple of $100 million in the region. Snap, depending on how you measure it, is near there. X is a bit lower. But going back to the, SRMG have tried interesting things. They bought Tamania, the biggest podcast network in Saudi Arabia. NBC have had huge success with Shahid. Shahid has more subscribers in the region than Netflix.
Really?
Yeah,
I did not know this.
Yeah, 3.8 million or so, 4 million subscribers, and Netflix are in the twos. It's got more, and it's got the fast free network as well. So they built Shahid over 10 years ago, 7 or 8 CDNs, spent $1 billion in content. They do all the Russian Saudi Pro League, and they do brilliant Arabic content, whereas Netflix don't have an office in the region. They serve it out of Amsterdam. So, and then Disney Plus didn't really do the region properly. Amazon and Apple spend more money on American football rights and American stuff than they do here. So it has allowed, Netflix obviously is a global studio and their stats are unbelievable. But then you look at other players, what we focus on and who's the legacy media. People would have compared Love in Dubai with Time Out. Then we bought 7 Days. So are we a competitor to Kalish Times? Then we do loads of fast social content. So ARN think we're a competitor. And then, so interestingly, ARN have about 90% of the radio market in the UAE, talking about podcasts, and, which is about $70 million. And, they really have they really do well in that space, and they're excellent. And you need that legacy media. But I think, what we look as mediums, where's people consuming media, we look at 5 areas in digital. So, social, which is basically vertical video these days, shorts, TikTok, Reels, even X, it's really focused on video. And podcasts get into that space as well when people do the cuts of the show, like Waleed and the producer here will do. So that's a vertical video. But then streaming is another one. Podcast is another one. Newsletters, I think, are the new magazines or the new websites. Yes. And then the 5th one is apps, as in Telegram, WhatsApp, and stuff like that. So if you don't have distribution, if you don't have these things, you're in trouble. If you don't have a big podcast distribution list, if you don't have smart TV apps, if you don't have social followers, if you don't have WhatsApp followers, if you don't have newsletter subscribers, you have to have all of these. So I'm more concerned of all of these right now, because I think if we have hundreds of millions in these areas, and we serve them with good content, then we can become a pretty powerful media company. Yeah.
As being in now podcasting world and also being in the content creation world, I think content creators all around the world probably have this problem that I sometimes suffer with, which is what to talk about next. And Love in Dubai, I've noticed, has always had the topics that people want to learn more about or hear more about. How do you guys do that? How do you guys always have the topics that people want to be engaged to?
Credit to the city, and credit to the people and the community. We can't take credit for it. Our DMs are full with random stories. Yeah. Credit to the city. Amr, at the start of the year, the industry asks us for our media kits and our editorial calendar. I remember, and we don't have one. We don't have an editorial calendar.
Oh, you don't?
We don't plan content.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
We're reactive.
Wow.
We don't, and by rule, by definition, because if you do, then you fall into the trap of having a deadline to publish and a print day.
Yeah.
And if you plan to go out on the 15th, don't, just wait.
Yeah.
And if you go out with something, if you try and dictate the news, if you try and go, sure, there are some listicles on our site, and we will do roundups every now and again. But even that, we don't put too much effort into it. If someone has a few free hours, but generally, at 9 a.m. this morning, someone comes on shift and they try and capture what were you guys, Raja and Amr, what were you texting your friends last night about? We have to put that within the media guidelines into the media. We have to capture the feel of the zeitgeist of the city, and we have to do that in the language of populist media. And if we do that every day, all the time, and now we're in 22 cities across the region, and we have more and more people coming to join us, and they all have ideas on original content, and they all want to do this. I'm like, hang on, be the pulse of the city, watch what's happening, curate it, make sense of all the noise and all the chatter, and that's how it's done.
Yeah.
So how do you respond to people who say that Love in Dubai portrays or presents an overly idealized image of Dubai?
I don't know. I mean, everyone has a perception. We don't try and define it too much, and we're not too precious. We're not a retail company, or we don't need to concern about our brand image too much. Influencers have to more because it's their reputation. Sometimes they delete posts because they're getting slammed. We don't. We take the heat. And, some people will say that. Raja, some people will say that, we show negative sides. Some people will say different things. I think what's quite important to us is that we represent the city fairly. That we have a mix. If there's 600,000 people from Egypt here, then why would we be a Western focus? Why do we write about Western celebrities? Or if there's 1 million people from India here, why don't we write? So why don't we have a mix? And sometimes in the comments, people will say, who is that? I don't know. Well, that's the point. Of course you don't, because it's not your lunchbox. It's not your country. It's not the 30 C-list celebs that the Sun would write about in the UK, because it's not important. We're also very careful. Like, we write about influencers a lot, and we try and tell people, and we interview on the Love in Dubai show every day. We interview TikTokers, and we were at the TikTok Awards, and people might know who these people are.
There's a TikTok Awards. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Third year in a row here, and I've been in social media a long time. There's something different about the TikTok Awards.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. It's not. When Meta or Facebook or Snap or YouTube have events over the years, very commercial. They try and sell stuff. TikTok is a party. Like, there was more coverage on the TikTok Awards on the Palm, on Love in Amman and Love in Beirut and Love in Saudi than there was on Love in Dubai. TikTok bring the creators. They bring in 450 creators from across the region. I asked the organizers, I said, is the theme fancy dress here? Did you hire people to wear those stilts and those big gowns? And they're like, no, that's just them.
That's just TikTok culture.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. I'm not on TikTok too much. I only follow we have about 40 channels. I follow them to see what the team are up to, or what we're putting out there. But so I don't, I'm not on top of all the culture. I rely on Love in Dubai to tell me who a TikToker is, or have them on the show or whatever. But TikTok's just a whole own world.
It is, definitely. My kids would never dare step foot in probably the social media platforms that me and my wife are on. But if we ever step foot in theirs, we're like, what is this? It's a whole new world, definitely. Yeah. But it's the way that people connect. I think there's a demographic that each platform serves. And I think that demographic is a lot more entertainment, and then the way that they consume information, which is a little bit more relaxed, laid back version of perhaps Instagram.
I actually I agree with you, but I also disagree, because the way I look at TikTok is actually like a search engine. Like so many times, like if I'm looking for an information and I want a quick, easy information to consume, instead of going on Google and getting like the long
go on
version,
TikTok, huh?
exactly, or on YouTube where I have to watch a long video, I can just actually go on TikTok, type whatever is it that I'm looking for, and it pops. And I can watch it in maximum a minute or two. And also, like, what the thing is with TikTok, I think from when first, or especially like if we're going to go back in time to the time of Corona, people were using TikTok mostly for entertainment. But you can also go there to learn, for education. There's plenty of information for everyone. Whatever it is that you're looking for, you'll actually find it on TikTok.
It's a brilliant algorithm. It's a brilliant platform, and
is.
I totally agree that if you want to go on it somewhere as a trip and you're looking for inspo videos, if you type the location on TikTok, they've done such a good job at search. People used to say YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world because people used to search for things on YouTube, how to do, and now people are searching on TikTok. But then, the chat apps, the chat GPTs are taking over search as well and stuff. But TikTok's an amazing platform, and all this fuss about America banning it and not banning it. Trump said, if the kids are on it, we have bigger problems than China knowing about our kids. But interesting. It probably goes back to a deal, but. I, for one, I want this region and emerging markets to grow. And, the power that US have is too strong for the world. They interfere too much elsewhere, right? Obviously, it's good to have relations. And it's good to do business deals in the US. In this region, there's a lot of FDI in the US. And it's really good that we have open borders and open trade. However, I think they don't know... Western culture dominated music and cinema for so long. And Western culture, in a way, the biggest TikTokers in the world are US. And if they shut TikTok, they don't know that they're allowing culture to be from other countries. So they'll allow the TikTokers at the TikTok Awards from the region. They will grow more because they'll become more influential. Yeah, they won't have the same audience if it's not VPN'd in the US, but I think the US is... But by blocking TikTok, you're blocking Hollywood, what it did before with movies. And they miss that influence. They think China has influence, but no, Americans on TikTok have influence because they're the biggest.
Definitely.
What's her name? DeMello or, Charlie DeMello.
Charlie.
Yeah. These type of people, they're huge on TikTok,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, Mr. Beast is looking for some investors. Maybe Love in Dubai should consider going in on the bid for buying some part of TikTok.
No, I don't think we're at that size. Mr. Beast, is a phenomenal, but yeah, look, I think, how we run our business, how we see things is definitely on a scale of, it's a bit different, it's a bit local. These tech platforms have done an amazing job. They are the platforms. We live on top of them. Okay, we have apps and stuff like that, but we publish natively. We're like a creator. We think each Lovin city, Love in Beirut or Love in Cairo or Love in Baghdad, the content creator in these cities are supposed to be as influential as a creator in those cities.
If there was a Love in Miami, how would the content be different given the fact that the city and the freedom of speech and freedom of perhaps media and the power of media, how they have some ways of basically creating headlines that perhaps are some ways not something that you'd see probably in the GCC.
Yeah.
How would that be different?
Okay, kind of a loaded question, two parts to it. So basically, every time we look at a market entry with Lovin, we need to connect to the local people. So in Love in Cairo, it took us a while to speak to Egyptians in the right way. When we do Casablanca, probably, instead of Marrakesh, we have Love in Casablanca as our plan. We want to do Maghreb, we want to do North Africa properly. We will find a way that's relevant, which language, which dialect. But each one is different. In Saudi, we did Love in Saudi Bil Arabi, and then Love in Riyadh and Love in Jeddah in English.
Did you? Okay, nice.
Kuwait, we're starting. The sort of expat cities feels like, that it's easier. Abu Dhabi, Doha, Dubai feel like it's straight, like it's a playbook. But we pick themes, we pick nostalgia. X chocolate bars. Amr, where did you grow up?
In Miami.
Okay, if I did a headline now, 10 sweets that you remember eating with your grandparents growing up on a festive occasion, everyone will think of the other thing. I'll think of Werther's Original. Someone in the region will think of Kanafa. Someone in the region will think of,
regionalized to where it's relevant to them.
Seas candies in Murdoch or Buffett's territory in West Coast. But so basically, everyone remember, and nostalgia is everything. Remember, everyone. There's hero brands in the region.
True.
People are proud of what came from the region. Emirates content does very well in Love in Dubai. While we wouldn't promote other airlines in a way because it's commercial or whatever. Local heroes. We have a crown prince here. We have a crown prince in Saudi Arabia. Same thing. So you look at these playbooks are
Yeah.
the playbooks. So market entry, you get this right, you get people who know the city, you know it, from that point of view. So Lovin can work anywhere, in any language, anywhere. From a media company, and then working under different constitutions, it's very different.
Of course.
You know, the world, humans are thousands and thousands of years old. The sort of latest release, the latest, I'm joking, but the Constitution in the US, the First Amendment, in relatively to human history, is 250 years old, right? So that First Amendment, again, going back to my point, is fine for 350 million people, and what works there is great. But when you have Meta, who've got 2 or 3 billion of the 8 million people on a platform every month, and when you've got Mark Zuckerberg come out 2 weeks ago and say we need to get back to the First Amendment, for which country?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Exactly. If it's a
There-
global platform,
exactly, and I think
who are you serving?
exactly, and I think that's really, I think that'll cause problems.
Sure.
There are also 350 million people in 22 Arab League or Arabic-speaking countries. So, and there isn't one constitution here, but there aren't constitutions to a degree, but they're linked to Islam and the Prophet, peace be upon him. And so, you have to kind of think of media, and that's why we don't focus on Miami, because if we start trying to do beyond, like, it's hard enough to do media here. And for hundreds of years, the printing press was banned on the Ottoman Empire. So media is relatively new. Like, the first printing press in Riyadh was 1953. Asharq al-Aswad and Arab News started in 1975, 200 years after the UK Times. The first media law, which is being rewritten at the moment in Saudi, was in 1972. Asharq al-Aswad, 1975. So printing press in Riyadh, 1953. And these things are relatively new, right? So the fact that people say there's no freedom of speech in the region, I say, well, which platform is banned? The only platform that's banned in one country, you won't know this, but TikTok's banned in Jordan.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
But
I didn't know
you can
that.
say, but it's not really banned anywhere else. It's obviously banned in India, but in the region it's not banned. And platforms are open, and so it allows media. Like, we had 1 billion followers summit. Dubai has an Arab media forum that it hosts every year. We're the first foreign media owned company in Saudi Arabia. I'm Irish. I'm no Saudi owner. And I have 7 or 8 websites in Saudi Arabia that publishes without censorship every day for 8 years.
Amazing.
So what First Amendment? What are you talking about?
Exactly.
And so, but going back to the points, like, I love the challenge. The first point of market entry, I'd love to do Miami. My brothers are in San Francisco, California, and we'd love to tackle that. But first, we'll do this region.
Yes.
So-
And that's, you guys done well.
Circling back to the 1 billion summit, you've attended, right? So how was the experience? Tell us a little bit about it, because Amr and I, we definitely
We didn't
not.
get to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, look, the 1 billion followers summit is interesting. It's strategic from the government and Dubai to make Dubai livable and attractive to creators, to attract creators like Charlie D'Amelio or whatever, who can't use TikTok in the US to come here. And they've been very successful at it. There's a lot of creators who've come here on holiday or work and end up living here. So from that point of view, the creator economy is growing. From that point of view, it's very successful. The 1 billion followers summit, not to sort of write a story of it, but it evolved. Originally there was a JV between Visioneers, an entity under the government in Emirates Towers, and NAS Daily, and they had the NAS Summit, and it kind of spun out of that. And the first year on the Palm, they ran it for them. This is the third year. Then they no longer run it. NMC, a kind of PR agency, and they run it in-house now.
Oh, I didn't know this was from there.
Yeah, and
NAS Daily started it.
So NAS Daily had the office in that sort of area.
Okay.
And it was a JV. The Dubai Media, not Dubai Media Office, but Dubai government created it, and they have different subdivisions out of there. Now they've created Creators HQ.
HQ there.
That one is very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's great. There's incentives. Like, I attended the event. It was quite emotive to see, the gentleman who won the $1 million as best creator, Simon Squibb, crying. He's quite emotional when he won it. it's pretty cool, like to see all the creators come in. Last year it was even more government feel. This year I think they did a good balance at capturing the public's imagination. You know, Red Bull did that walking stunt thing on the tightrope, like that kind of went viral.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Between the two Emirates Towers, he did a.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
We've seen it on Love
Yeah.
in
The
Dubai.
Yes, that's where
Yeah,
I've
and
caught more of it.
probably inside Sheikh Hamdan's post as well. But you know, like and so I think they did a good job at, you know, for the first time in 30 years, I heard other people saying, "I wish I was there," and that you know, usually. My feeling on these events is that they tend to work better when they're run by people who are scrappy and have to make money from it.
Yeah.
But I think what this region does really well is JVs and bring in smart people to run these events. And I think they did this really well. Like Abu Dhabi tried to do VidCon a few years ago after Corona, and it didn't work because it was still hard to get in and out. But what's so amazing is, and the American journalist Taylor Lawrence, she kind of said, they did 1 billion followers. They didn't license VidCon, because VidCon's the one where people rush after Logan Paul for signatures and whatever.
Yes.
But then, you know, we have Leap coming up in Riyadh and on the 9th of Feb, 180,000 people. There's Web Summit in Qatar, which came out of Dublin and Lisbon. They'll do like 15,000 people in Qatar this year, but that's a JV as well. So, but Leap is an IP. It's a tahalluf with Informa IP, a PIF kind of JV. So everyone approaches these events and the ownership structure. I just like that there's a hit. I like that 1 billion followers a hit, because when when Dubai International Film Festival shut down, they tried to create a new thing called, a few years ago, they did Vid DXB, and they had Casey Neistat, and they had Anas Bukash, and lots of creators there, but it didn't work. And then they went back to the drawing board, and then they did a thing called on DXB, I think, out in Studio City, and they had Spike Lee and huge people over, with no one in attendance.
Yeah.
And now, like their third or fourth iteration, in my view, and obviously this is just a different narrative. No one from that side would talk in this way, but from my view, they've kind of got a film festival, and they've got a Vid DXB, and they've got On DXB, and they've got a VidCon all in one, and it's 1 billion follower summit. Yeah. It's incredible. But at the same time, without disclosing countries or designations, but I chatted to senior people in another Gulf country, and they said they were so curious about this 1 billion follower summit. Like, what's Dubai doing? Creators are big. It's good for marketing. It's good for influencers. What's Dubai doing? And they wondered about the name, and they said, "Oh, we'll do 10 billion followers." But so
I think we know.
well, I don't know if you do. Well, I'm not going to reveal it, but it's not the point. I think the point is, I saw some press narrative about this one, and it said, in total the speakers who were there are 2.3 billion. But it's just, going back to the point, I think what they've done is they've created the modern media festival, and it's only going to grow, and it's great.
And this is what I love about Dubai, actually. UAE in general, and specifically Dubai, is they always, whenever they take on any project, they A/B test. Let's see what works and what doesn't work. And then whatever works, let's capitalize on that, let's optimize, and let's just take it to the next level.
Absolutely.
Unlike other places where they go, or like other countries or other places or governments, like they would usually go for like, okay, let's start with the biggest thing instead of trying to kind of A/B test it.
The recent announcement, golden visas for content creators. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
I think that's going to bring some new people to town.
It absolutely will. I'm in a WhatsApp group because I spoke at the event, and I'm in a WhatsApp group with all the international creators, and there's a guy leading it, and he announced this, and they're all signing up. Whether they move or not, they're taking it because it's a great 10-year Emirates ID for not much money,
And that's so good for us to know as investors in Dubai, developers in Dubai, that the government is not just trying to attract investors, but we're making a holistic approach to be able to build a community from every aspect. Not just awarding people that have money, but also people that have talent, doctors, scientists. Now we have social media specialists, all these different walks of life and different expertise, all under one country and leadership. I think that's what makes Dubai great.
Absolutely. Right. Couldn't agree more.
We're loving Dubai.
We're all loving Dubai. Yeah,
100%.
I actually wanted to get your take on the let's call it the Arab content creator environment. Like, I feel like I've had this conversation actually with Walid several times, where we feel like there isn't actually enough good creators, or like segmented. I don't know how to put it. Let me put it in a
Like
better way.
Arabs, social media influencers.
Yani, we have like very few faces that we can recognize when it comes to content creation. And I'm not talking about people who are dancing on TikTok. I'm talking about thought leaders in the Arab world.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I approach it in a few different ways. You know, when we're a media company trying to create content that's relevant to the region, one of the narratives is that 1% of X%, 20% of the global content online is Arabic.
Yeah.
Therefore, put more Arabic online and you get an audience. That's true to a degree, but it's not always true. Like, I don't think, because Arabic itself is so localized.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if I speak my broken Egyptian or Levant or Khaliji, it's different to Maghreb completely, right? It's different to Tunis or Morocco. And I think, you know, how do you do Arabic content online? How do you do audiobooks? How do you do music? How do you do things? So that's one of the points. I think secondly, I think there's loads of big TikTokers and YouTubers, like the millions of followers, like Noor Stars is huge on YouTube, Iraqi dialects, like there's loads of big stars. I think on YouTube in their own lunchbox, like Abu Fla is huge, right? There's huge people on different platforms, right? But you know, to a degree, right? The country population here is different size, right? Like, you know, if you compare how many followers, people in Bollywood have on Instagram, it mightn't be as big. But I think there are a lot of content creators in the Arab world. I don't think they're famous outside the platform, and I don't think you're right. I don't think there's enough stars in leadership and thought leadership. But that's another point about Western influence. We have smashy business, and our content creators would write about Bezos and Musk, and we say no. Create the narrative. The media has to help this. We have to rinse and repeat, and we have to do what we did on Love in Dubai. You know, when we started writing about Mo Vlogs and Rashid Bilhassa and Money Kicks, people would say, stop making stupid people famous. And we're like, no, like they're important culturally and locally, you know, and we believe the same for the business leaders in this region. But business leaders in this region, some of them aren't online. Like we did a signing with, with the Danube group the other day, with Adel Sajwan and his dad, Rizwan, who founded Danube. And Adel told me that his dad, he's been doing it for 30 years, business here.
Yes.
But only in the last few years did he do media. And we now see, like, we see last week there was a nice little kind of back and forth between, they call him Abu Rashid, but Mohammed Al-Abar and Al-Habtour, Khalif Al-Habtour. And, but they're two people who you now get to know. And people growing up here would know them a bit more. But it needs the media, and it needs them to keep creating content, and the media to consciously make a choice. You know when you have like DEI, or you have weighting in media, and you have like, should we depict the bad guy as an Arab, or should we, in the US, like they'll talk about like, ethnic balance and even female empowerment, and should, on a panel, should it be females and males on a panel? I think media in this region needs to write about Arabs, irrespective of gender or irrespective of anything. I think we need to write about more, and that's what we're doing. Like, our mission is to tell inspiring stories from this region. We set up Love in Baghdad the week when there was a headline that New York Times is shutting its bureau in Iraq because the war is over, so they've nothing to talk about. And this is just the point, right?
Yeah.
A capitalist 1850 newspaper from the capitalist capital of the world, New York. I love that we have a new, the tagline for Abu Dhabi, the capital of capital. I love this.
Yeah,
Nice. Sir Martin Sorrell of WPP and now S4 Capital, he spoke again at Davos this week, and he comes out with this narrative that the greatest nation branding in the world is taking place in the Arab world. Nation branding is at a huge level, whether it's PIF, whether it's Ronaldo, whether it's 1 Billion Follower Summit, whether it's anything. Nation branding here is huge. And you have to understand that from we're in a real estate conversation, we're in main realty, There was a guy who was running for president. His name's not important, but I remember he used to work in finance, and he crossed between private and public sector, and he said that in the private sector there's two things: there's finance and there's communications. Finance is everything to do with infrastructure, real estate, capital. You couldn't have done your launch last year. You couldn't have moved from a brokerage to a developer without capital.
Sure.
So that's very much the finance world. And what you're doing here now is communications.
Agreed.
And communications is everything in terms of, PR, comms, media, but also it's apparel and retail and Coca-Cola and FMCG. Those brands are nothing without marketing. The biggest marketing budgets in the world are P&G and Unilever. They don't have the biggest financing in the world because they don't have capex too much. It's all about opex and marketing and everything. So to understand it in that way, I think that's interesting from a point of view of being a leader in this region. And to your question, Raja, about are there thought leaders? People need to understand communications. We don't have that many. We don't have people don't list too much here because liquidity isn't high on the ADX and DFM, but we're having more of it now. I think a big tipping point was Aramco choosing to that. Well, we had, end of Q4 last year, we had the biggest tech IPO in the world last year with Talabat going out.
IPO.
And I think there's lots of apps now for trading. Like Robinhood has 30 million or so active traders only on NASDAQ and the US stock markets. And I think my point here is a little bit more to that, in that if you're not, people talk about transparency and people talk about communications. And private family offices and private equity is really important. But if you have to answer about your results and your earnings report, and why Augustus Media as a private company publish our earnings every year, is because we believe in that type of leadership, and we believe in that type of communication and transparency. And I think the more that people talk, the better they get, the more heroes we get, and the less share of voice that Western American speakers get, and then less that we have to, what's the word, like frown or worship people, the speakers we bring in from the other parts of the world to speak at our events, because we've heard their TikToks go viral, and more so that we have business leaders and people from every sector from this region. And I'm going on, but I used to have to travel. When I moved here in 2012, I used to go to Web Summit Lisbon. I used to go to South by Southwest, CES. Now I don't.
Now they're coming to your doorstep.
And the people on stage, yes, there's a mix, and I love that they do that. But we're having more and more leaders from the region. We're having creators here, but we're having more and more people choosing Abu Dhabi to go public in, choosing to list their companies here, choosing to be here. And I think you will get what you're looking for.
As a private company, you're sharing your financials. Wow, that's something that not many companies would be willing to do. And this is something that brings up the point of what Mr. Alabar was talking about at the Billion Summit, how he is accountable and he is basically reporting to his shareholders, and he's serving the needs of his shareholders to the point that where he puts the company's interest and every business decision in the best interest of all the shareholders. And when you run a company from that perspective, it changes the way you serve your people.
Absolutely.
And definitely if that Love in Dubai's philosophies and that's how it's being practiced, then definitely that's like the key to success, I think, in any business, is when you're really diving in and being able to make sure that you're able to run a transparent operation.
Yeah, Amr, I think people hide behind the word private, as in private sector and private company. It means you're not in the public markets. It doesn't mean that you don't have responsibility to obey the law and things like that. I know publishing reports isn't obeying the law, but it fosters a culture of transparency.
Yes.
Netflix have a Western culture, but Netflix have a no rules HR policy or employee manual, and they wrote a book about it. But basically, they have radical transparency, and people choose their own leave, people pick their own salaries and stuff like that. We don't go that far. Don't think it works for the region, but we do publish our results. And alhamdulillah, we've been profitable each year with publishing.
Yes.
And I think I know that we won't have years, and I'll have to. People will question it further as we get bigger, and that will put me on the spot. And it makes me level up because we did $12.4 million gross last year. up 26% year over year, and we'll go for 15 million this year, another 26%. And people won't pay attention so much now, but I want to get us to 100 million. Inshallah, the sort of that metric. I want to get us to that number, and I need to add people at that level all the way up, and I need to also be patient and do it over sort of many years. So if one day we have more scrutiny on us at all levels, then I'm preparing for that now.
Yeah. No, transparency is the ultimate way to be held accountable, not only from your shareholders, but at the same time, perhaps yourself, is because it allows you to be able to benchmark, like you said. And the same philosophies that we've grown in Realty on is to be able to know that we're here to be able to serve our investors and at the same time our public. And if we use our profit and loss report as a scoreboard for our world of business, then let that be known to people how good we're doing or how bad we're doing.
True.
So that they can make a decision accordingly. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Should we expect to see Love in Dubai present in a different form of media, for instance, venturing into film production, local film production, or fostering the local talents?
That's such an interesting question. It's a hard one. We employ 115 people, 50 of who are content creators. We absolutely foster local talent. We have Augustus Academy. We bring hundreds of kids from Gems Academy and everywhere into our 12,000 square foot studios in Dubai Production City. Like, we definitely do that. We hire from the universities here. We hire in universities in Saudi. We definitely do that. In terms of the question about film and original content, it's such a hard one economically right now, especially on the platforms. Unless you own your own subscription service, it's very hard to monetize original content on social media. And I think that's where BuzzFeed and others before us got caught. And I think I'm very careful. Many people pitch us show ideas. Every new content person comes in, wants to do original shows, talks about IP. I'm very careful on it. But we have a streaming service, like, as well as Love and Life, Mindset brand, local news, we have Smashy, inspiring content platform, Smashy Business, Smashy Sports, Smashy Crypto. There's 13 Smashies. But at the same, Smashy, we want to be known as a content. If you want Smashy Business as a newsletter, as a 30-minute show in the morning in your car on your way to work at 10 a.m., or if you want, an on-demand audio, or if you want a newsletter or social media, you can get Smashy Business. But for 4 years, we've been building a streaming service. And today, just today, on 25th of January, we'll stream 8 hours live production from Yas Marina Circuit, from the biggest drifting championship in the region.
Nice.
That we're paying for. We're doing full production. At the same time, we'll do 3 games in Al Nasser Hall for the Dubai International Basketball Tournament with international basketball teams that we're paying for. It's costing me hundreds of thousands of dirhams to do this, and I only have 1,180 something subscribers paying 18 dirhams a month. There's 12,000 users. It's because I want to get to a level of
to build a platform,
being able to buy rights, being able to subscribe. And we're launching, quite confidential, but we will launch on a fast channel, free ad-supported streaming service, a Love in Dubai TV channel this year. Mm-hmm. So we will launch a TV channel because, streaming services is coming up. We think about, we think there's about 20 million households in the region who have a smart TV, who are on smart app flicking rather than channel flicking. Yeah. And we think that number, can get to up to 100 million by 2030. That number in the US is already at about, it's already at 100%. So every household in the US almost has a smart TV. So, it's not going to go back to the 90s of when 90 million people after iftar would watch a Ramadan show across the region. It's not going to be at those numbers because we've moved off the TV and we're on TikTok. And I get that. But still, being able to have SVOD, subscription video on demand, AVOD, advertising video on demand, as well as your social media monetization channels, branded content and things like that, will help us have the economic model that allows us to do film and things like that. And going back to the question, I look at trends like, remember the Rugrats and these shows? That was from Nickelodeon. That was the third stage of media that they did. That only happened after about 10 years. They used to do live TV because it was the cheapest. You know, they would have a set in Universal Studios at 10 o'clock at night, and they would things would break and they'd have guests. Then they moved into sitcoms, where we have kids running around sitcoms. And it was only after 20 years that they moved into animation, which is more costly, and they became famous for it. So I love the question. I think it's a maturity. I think it's a national progression, but we have to look at the economic model and not try and what people, I think, Steve Jobs kind of put something in front of someone that was so good. I think Netflix do a brilliant job at it, but I'm not brave enough, but I don't think we're ready enough yet to create original content. Yeah.
There is this new sense of time. There's a new time, I guess, now determined by Trump's presidency in the US. And one of the headlines that he has made is where now US will be only recognizing 2 genders. How does that change the way that perhaps people from this region look at the US?
I'm not, I've only been from the region. I wouldn't claim to be from it yet. But look, from media point of view, we were quite. I came from a media advertising world, and media plans is all about demographics. Every media plan will be saying which age group, which gender, which ethnicity, even which country they're from, what purchasing power, capital do they have. But the users don't think like that, and storytelling doesn't think like that, and we were quite conscious not to pick a gender. Lad Bible in the UK picked a gender. There's plenty female gender platforms and ethnicity platforms which are needed, which are fine, but with Lovin' we were careful to be gender agnostic, but also to try and give equality in what our content is. So we were quite careful, and with Smashy as well, not to pick an age. We want Lovin'. Our new content director in Riyadh told me, who's Lovin' Riyadh for? Which age? Which person? And I'm like, everyone.
Yeah.
9 million people in Riyadh, everyone. But you can't. You have to talk to them differently. No, we don't. No, we don't. Like, you talk about the city and you make it digestible. And I think from that point of view, we're pretty clear on what we want to do media. From I think this region and the West has a sort of a. We touched upon it with the Constitution, but I think culturally there's a mix. Like, I talked about this before on podcasts, and I think Waleed remembers when I said it, but I think the world has a global Islamophobia issue and an anti-Semite issue, which is both Arabs and Jews. Like, it has both issues, right? And I think people think about these terms as if it's one or the other, but there definitely is an unspoken about Islamophobia issue, absolutely. And I think it's more America's problem to figure out. I think they need to figure out their relation with the world. I think we're in our world, I think we have enough on our plate to pick up countries that need it. And I think, going back to the point about leaders, a lot of people look up to His Highness here for what he's done. And I think we're getting that ripple effect across the region. And you're talking about the start of the year. There's a lot to be positive about in the Levant region. Obviously, we need more. Whether you're talking about governance and leadership and economics and things like that. There's a lot to be positive about. But I think this region is pretty clear on where it stands on gender, and I think I think it's important to be aware of that. And from our point of view, we're pretty focused on being a company of the region, and that's where we stand at the moment.
No, and as an American Muslim and now living in Dubai, when I heard that this was a stance that Trump was willing to take, in a way, I was really happy to have heard that there was a bold move to be able to take and go back to the true, I guess, scripture of religions, which I believe all religions, I think, at some degree, are of the fact that they support 2 genders. And so from that perspective, I was really, I guess, happy to know that we are now going back to those type of values, where kids can have the ability to know that there's no force or there's no third-party opinion or gender questioning or some type of affiliation that's being tied to their growth in the U.S. So I think this is something that we can all probably understand, that is some people are sensitive to it and others that are completely just against it.
Yeah. Yeah, woke is a bit broke, I think. Yeah.
Yes, that's what it is.
We're just happy that on this side of the globe we're not part of the woke movement.
Yes.
We kind of float in our own universe.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The MAC investing 20 billion in the US, that definitely made headlines. And I think that's something great to know, that US is tapping into the resources available in our great region here in the UAE. And I think overall speaking, then after that, Saudi also jumping in to be able to make headlines there. Don't you think that's going to be good for the region as well in the long term?
Yeah, I think it's also good for, US optics of people from the region and relations as well from a business point of view. We talked about people having heroes from here to follow, but imagine the heroes from here become heroes over there.
Yeah.
Right, in the footballing world, to hear Anfield singing the Egyptian king is amazing,
Yes.
right? And I think, I grew up and having Irish footballers as heroes is great that people of my age in Egypt or the Arab world didn't have. And we need these heroes. We need female, we need male, we need business, we need different sector. We need a lot of that. And
Yes.
I think His Highness, again, does it really well here when in the space mission and the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, and when they put astronauts in space and launch satellites, it's all to inspire youth to have something to go for. And it's so important, especially with females as well. My wife has just kind of launched her own business, and, it's a hard thing to do. Like a female Muslim in the region doesn't have that many people to look up to, right? A lot of people look up to Huda Kadan and Moda Katan, and
Yes.
it's inspiring, right? It's inspiring. And to have these people do these things is really important. And then to your point of having those people recognized in the US.
Definitely.
People kind of, they talk negatively of Dubai Bling in a way, but when I was growing up, we were watching the OC and those types of shows. And now we're having different types of heroes and different types of people. Okay, people are going to twist this comment and say they're not the right people to go up to.
Yeah.
And maybe that's right too. But I do think this sort of visibility, and Netflix is doing that. Do you think this sort of visibility, like going back to culture, like when YouTube did music classification 15 years ago, they didn't have a genre for Korean music. It was only after Gangnam Style that they had to create K-pop as something that you
got
could
them on the
tag
map.
your music.
Yes.
And I think, to your point again about like having people to go up to, there's a lot of Arab rap that's getting big, right?
Yeah.
Like each country has their rap stars. I know they're big in Egypt, and I know they're up and coming in Saudi and elsewhere. So I think that's to the point of like, we need these heroes in different sectors. But I do like, I'm focused on the region, but I do like that, Mohammed Al-Abar is opening hotels in Greece, in Bulgaria, that, Khalif Al-Habdur, Maldives, and Khalif Al-Habdur did Bulgaria this week, and, Hussein Sajani is in the US with,
Yes.
as you mentioned,
Yes.
so these type of things are important as well.
Definitely. Prominent business leaders making news all over the world, I think, helps to be able to understand that Dubai is not just about tourism, but we're also great entrepreneurs that are
Absolutely.
getting recognized at a world platform.
And I think it's important as well, like when the sort of 2023, 2025 genocide in Gaza continued, Arabs employed by global tech companies in the US were afraid to speak about where they're from. And I think, the founder of Whoop is Egyptian American, but he
Yes.
never says he's Egyptian American. Amjad, who runs Replit, talks very positively, a big kind of AI company in the US. He's always on X talking about the region. He's Jordanian, but we don't have enough. And I'm sort of an immigrant. I am an immigrant in the region, but we don't have people speaking about their Arab background as much, spokespeople in the US. And, there was an article out this week, has Huda Katan's voice on what's happening harmed her business? And the answer is no. It's still flying off the shelves in Sephora or whatever. So, when we see these things, it does sort of show to the point that I think like that these types of stories and these types of people will create less unknown and less sort of stigma. And I do think that that's how to break down the walls of Islamophobia and things like that.
So you're in the world of media, I'm in the world of real estate. And when you drive down Sheikh Zayed Road, you see every billboard, every other billboard with a real estate developer. And then maybe every launch that happens in town is probably plastered all over Love in Dubai. As a developer, I'd like to know, how can a developer stand out on your platform and in the media? How do you think we can add value to be able to perhaps do something different?
I think that is a sort of a tactical marketing question, but I think what we've had, and we kind of touched upon it off air at the start, the private developers have done really well in the last sort of 5 years in particular, but they were set up sort of 10 years ago or so. A lot of them have done really well. I interviewed a lot of them, and I was just inspired by how they approach things. Now it's sort of boom cycle, and so you see a lot of them doing branding and awareness. And how do you build a brand? How do you have values? How do you stick to those? As much as I like doing commercial relations with property developers and helping them with launches, I'd much prefer to see them build long-term strategic marketing positioning and standing and being clear on what that is, because at the moment, there is a little bit about they did this, they did that.
Yeah.
I woke up this morning and someone's sending me Brian Adams as a property developer annual awards last night on WhatsApp. He's like, "Oh, we had him at our awards," and I'm kind of going, "Okay, cool." This is like the boom cycle. It's like I won't say because I'm in another developer, but I won't say who it is. But like basically, when I saw that, I'm like, "That's cool. We might do it." But at the same point, it's like, everyone has to outdo each other.
Yeah.
I was at one with Amr Diab on Thursday night, and everyone has to outdo each other.
know.
Yeah, Jason Derulo.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But exactly.
Imagine as a developer how I feel. Like, what do I do next? I mean, make somebody come from
but
the
that's
skies
exactly,
or what?
Dude, don't do it. Don't
Yeah.
do it. Don't do it. Like you focus on your products, and you focus. Look at Tesla; they don't spend on marketing. You focus on your product, but also brand is important. Like Tesla have a brand. And think of where you're going with things. Love in Dubai is 10 years this year, and we're going to do something. But like, what do we do, right? Like, and we're saying, well, we've done 10 years of community stories. How do we give back? But at the same time, imagine Alfred Seymour. I should mention other companies, but like basically, we mentioned EMAR. People stand for something.
Sure.
I think this private developer up and coming, there's an opportunity to sort of stand for something. It shouldn't necessarily be product, but how do the great brands stand out?
Sure.
And how do they? You mentioned, Amr, about communication and transparency.
Yes.
I think that's one. If you do that, you're doing what 90% of others aren't doing.
Definitely. Well, thank you,
And
Richard.
the podcast is a good place to start.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you, Raja, to be joining me today. Thank you, the audience. And like, subscribe, and comment below. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been